Hello everyone, this is Orlando from A Collector's Dream, and today I'm going to continue to show you some of my collection. And today I'm going to show you some of my oldest cards and my oldest set. I'm going to share with you the 1888 Goodwin Champions, the baseball set, which are the baseball players. The whole set comprises of 50 different cards from all different sports. But we're going to go ahead and just look at the baseball players. And on the PSA registry, hold on. The PSA registry, they have either the entire set or only the baseball players set. So we're going to talk about the baseball players in the champions. And the baseball players are Andrews, Anson, Brouthers, Carruthers, Dunlop, Glascock, Keefe, and Kelly, as you can see there. Then you have the bicyclist and all the other dudes that are in there. So what we're going to talk about is the 8 players that are on that set. And these cards were produced by Goodwin and Company in New York. And Goodwin owned the Old Judge and Gypsy Queen cigarettes. So that he produced what he thought would be the champion players of that era. So he chose what he thought were the top baseball players and other sports. So you could see that they also had the boxing and things like that here, where you have John L. Sullivan and all of that. But we're going to go ahead and talk about the baseball. So the first player that we're going to talk about, and when Goodwin decided to do these, he tried to find the top players in the league at the time. So that was his goal, was to come up with the top 8 players. And he was very successful in that, except for one player that really didn't work out too much, and that was the first one, and that was Ed Andrews. So Ed Andrews, and I'll give you a good look. These cards are really difficult to find, especially in mid-grade. Mid-grade is basically high grade for these cards from 1888. So this is the Ed Andrews cards. And Ed Andrews was really the one that didn't work out as well. He was kind of a small guy. He was 5'8", and he was an outfielder and a second baseman. And Ed Andrews was thought to be a good player back in the day because he was very young in 1888, and in 1887 he was a league leader in stolen bases. He had 56, and in 1888 he also had a good year with 57 stolen bases, and he batted .325. But overall, after playing about 10 years, his batting average really was just a average .257. And his WAR was pretty small, just a 2 WAR. So he was really more of a common player back in the day, but he was thought to be one of the up-and-coming stars. So as far as the baseball players, he's the only one really that isn't really considered a name player. The other guys, out of the 8 players in this set, 4 are Hall of Famers, and I think 2 more should be Hall of Famers. And one of the ones that I think we need to consider is when we talk about players back in the day, and the funny thing is I laugh because, they talk about players like Ohtani. Ohtani was a pitcher and a batter. And, that back in those days, there were players like that. And one of them was Bob Carruthers. And Bob Carruthers, and this is Bob Carruthers in a 5. Give you a good look at the Bob Carruthers card here. So that's the Bob Carruthers, and Bob Carruthers was, let me wipe it here. Bob Carruthers was he was a pitcher and he was a right fielder, and they called him Parisian Bob, and that was his nickname. And the guy had a WAR of 59.5, both pitching and hitting. I mean, here's a guy that won 218 games pitching, 218 games and lost 99. He ended up with an ERA of 2.83. And he pitched over 2,800 innings. And he also had saves. And, you know, he not only did he win 218 games, but he was a pretty good hitter. And let me check out his lifetime average. I'm looking it up here real quick for you guys so you can see. His lifetime batting average was 282. So he batted 282. He won almost 200 games. And actually he won 218 games. 218 games in his career, lost 99, and he batted career 282 hitter. And they have him here as a pitcher, but he was also a right fielder. And he was a great player for Brooklyn. And one of those guys that, you know, he helped, he won the 1886 World Series. He also won ERA titles. And one of these players that has largely been neglected as being a pitcher and a hitter. So I'd like to see Ohtani win 218 games and end up with a 284 batting average for his career. And let's compare him to Bob Carruthers. So I know it's a different era, guys, but just wanted to share some information that you guys may not have known about players like Bob Carruthers. And here's a picture of Bob Carruthers. And you can see there, right fielder and a pitcher. So that's Bob Carruthers. The next player I want to share with you guys is another player that really was a very, very good player and probably considered the best second baseman of the era, of the 1800s. And that is Fred Dunlop. And this is the Fred Dunlop in a 5. What I don't like is how PSA puts these in that little floating bag. And I got a couple of these that are floating around here, and I don't like it. This one too. They move around in the case. But it is what it is. So I had to pick up this beautiful card of Dunlop. Very rare. All of these cards that I'm showing you here, there's anywhere between 50 to 75 total on the PSA registry. So that's the Dunlop. So let's talk a little bit about Fred Dunlop. And Fred Dunlop was a pretty good hitter and a great defensive player. He ended up with a WAR of 37. His lifetime batting average was 292. OPS of 134. And, you know, he was, you know, stolen bases and all of that stuff. He was a very good player, and he helped win the 1887 World Series. And he also was a batting champion where he won the batting title, where he batted .412 in 1844. So here's one of the 400 hitters. And that year, in 101 games, he had 185 hits, 160 runs scored. He had 13 home runs. All these are league-leading numbers. And he batted .412 with a slugging percent of an OPS of 1.069. And this is back in 1884 when people weren't hitting home runs. People weren't doing those type of things. And he led the league with 13 home runs back in those days. So Dunlop, you know, could be considered as one of the players, maybe not for the Hall of Fame, but a 37 WAR and a 292 lifetime batting average with a year that he batted .412. Great player. And Mr. Goodwin picked him as one of the players that he thought were some of the best players of the era. So moving on to who I think really should be considered, and I did a whole video on this guy because I really think that he was one of the best shortstops and second basemen of the era. And this was Jack Glascock. And again, these are in a 5. This is in a 5. So Jack Glascock, and this is a beautiful card because it's the only one in the set of baseball that shows the full image of the player and actually how they played in the field. And of course, they were bare hands back in 1888. They didn't have gloves back then. And you could see that they played basically in dirt. I mean, it's just dirt. And his nickname was Pebbly Glascock, because what he would do is before he'd take the field, he'd go out and pick all of the little pebbles from the dirt to make sure that he didn't get a bad hop. And Pebbly Glascock was an incredible player with, he had over 2,000 hits in his career. He ended up with a WAR of 61.6. I mean, 61.6 WAR is pretty strong, especially back in those days and today. He had a batting average of 290, and he was considered like the Ozzie Smith in those days. With a 290 batting average, he was a good hitter, but in the as far as the fielding, he was considered to be the best fielder at the time. And I'm trying to see if I can find some fielding stats. There aren't too many from back in the day, but great hitter. This guy led the league in hits in 1889, the year after this card came out. He had over 200. He had 205 hits, and he batted .352 that year. And the following year, he led the league with .336 batting average. And he batted, another year .325. He did have a year where he batted .419, but he only played in 38 games at that time. And again, in 1893, all the way up there, he still was batting .320. So a lifetime 290 batting average, a 62 WAR, Pebbly Glascock. I think, he should be considered for a Hall of Fame. The thing was, the Hall of Fame didn't start until the 1930s. So when they started inducting people, they did the early 1900s where they put in the Ty Cobbs and the Babe Ruths and those guys they had to put in first. So, they kind of forgot. They went back and they ended up putting the Cap Ansons and people like that later. So let's move on to the Hall of Famers from this set. And the first Hall of Famer that I want to look at is the Dan Brouthers. And that's the Dan Brouthers card. And Dan Brouthers was, again, another incredible player. And he is in the Hall of Fame. This, again, is in a 5. And Dan Brouthers was a big-time player, big player overall. He was 6'2", he was over 200 pounds. He batted a lifetime batting average of .342, 78.7 WAR. He had over 2,300 hits. Lifetime OPS of .943, and an on-base percentage of .423 lifetime. Incredible player, Hall of Famer. He also won the 1887 World Series, and he was a 5-time batting champion. 5-time batting champion, an incredible player was Dan Brouthers, and a beautiful card of Dan Brouthers. So that is Dan Brouthers. Now, some of these cards do have the lithograph there, and some of them don't. It's pretty much split. I think half of my cards have it, and half of my cards don't. So there's no rarity involved in that at all. So it's not a big deal to get it with or without the lithograph on the back. So the next player I want to talk about was what many consider the best pitcher of the 19th century, of the 1800s. And I think this is probably I've talked to some of my collecting buddies. They say that this is probably my best card overall, maybe above the Mantle. I'm not sure on the value, but it's the Tim Keefe. And this one's in an 8. It's the only 8. There's 2 8s out there. This is the best one. I've seen the other one. And there are no 9s at all in this Goodwin Champion set. Not one card of any player, of any, has ever been graded a 9. So extremely rare to have an 8 card from 1888, especially Tim Keefe. Tim Keefe had an 86.9 WAR. He won 342 games. Lifetime ERA of 2.63. He pitched over 5,000 innings and had over 2,500 strikeouts. Back in those days, those were incredible numbers. He was the Nolan Ryan. He was the Cy Young back in the day before Cy Young. 342 wins, 86.9 WAR. He's a Hall of Famer, of course. He won the pitching Triple Crown. He won the World Series two times, two-time World Series champion, and three-time ERA leader. Tim Keefe is just a spectacular player. They called him Smiling Tim or Sir Timothy. They had to call him Sir. He was an incredible player. He was the player that invented the changeup, which fooled everybody because back in those days, they didn't have the changeup. And he invented the changeup, a pitch that's still used today by some of the best pitchers, like a Greg Maddux. And this is the PSA 8. It's a PSA 8. What can you say? It's a beautiful card in great condition. So this is probably one of the top card in my beautifully centered, beautiful card of the best pitcher of the 1800s, Tim Keefe. The only one you're going to see in this condition, the only other one, I've seen it, and it's not as nice as this. Not as well centered and not as clean as this card here. So this is Tim Keefe, pitcher for New York. Old Judge, Gypsy Queen cigarettes. The 1888 Goodwin Champion. Beautiful artwork on these. Tim Keefe, and near mint 8. So let's move on to the other Hall of Famers in the set. And we're going to go with, of course, the big name here, and that is the Cap Anson. And I mean, what can you say about Cap Anson? Cap Anson is the first player, and this is Cap Anson, this is an A4. Cap Anson, first player in history to have 3,000 hits, 4-time batting champion, lifetime batting average of 334, a WAR of 94.3, the best player of the 18th century, of the 19th century, of the 1800s, the best player, first baseman for Chicago. He was the manager. He was one of the ones that, really made a lot of the rules in baseball, and they made a lot of rules because of him. He created spring training and things like that. So, extremely important person in the history of baseball. And there's, despite what people say about him personally, professionally as a baseball player, his records just stand for themselves. 94.3 WAR, 334 batting average overall, on base percentage of almost 400 for his career. He was just a pioneer, and that's what I call him, the pioneer of baseball. He was an RBI champion for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. He was a batting champion, like I said, 4 times, hit leader, and you can go on and on and on. But over 3,400 hits in his career. Incredible player, and really the best player of that era. And the last player I want to show, and I left him for last because he is my favorite player from the 1800s for the 19th century, and that's King Kelly. King Kelly was the star. He was the one everybody liked. He was the one that was the most beloved player. He was the Babe Ruth of the 1800s, of the 19th century. His numbers are great, but his legend is even greater. They started spring training because of him. He was the stolen base leader for many, many, many years. He batted over 307 lifetime batting average, a 46 WAR. He had over 1,800 hits, and they literally, he got $100,000 signing bonus, which no one back in those days would get. He was a Hall of Famer. He won the batting title. He was really the originator, one of the first stolen base leaders, and he actually was the first one to invent the hook slide. And they wrote a song about him. The first pop hit ever in the United States was Slide Kelly Slide, written about King Kelly. And this is the one that I have on my registry because it's PSA, but this is the one that I look at. This is the King Kelly that I look at, which is in a 4, SGC 4. So, so King Kelly again was an incredible player, and really, was one that really wrote the book on a lot of the rules. He was one of those that when there was a pop-up that happened, and he was in the dugout at the time, and in those days you can just call the player out and replace them at any time. You just have to shout it out. And the rumor is that there was a pop-up near the dugout, and he was a catcher. You can see he's a catcher for Boston. And they said, he said, Kelly coming in for the catcher. And he got up from the dugout and just caught the ball and made an out. And then they ended up that eventually they changed the rule and they said you can't call during the play, you have to go after the play. But he would do a lot of things, like he would run from first to third if the umpire wasn't looking. And, they changed a lot of the rules because of him. And he was kind of a tricky player and did a lot of stuff like that. But he was a winner. And that's really why after he was in Boston, he went to play for Chicago with Cap Anson. And once Cap Anson got him on his team and saw that, he was more of a partier, like a Mickey Mantle type, Cap Anson said, no, we're going to get you back in shape and we're going to start spring training. And that's why he started spring training, because of King Kelly. So I wanted to share some stories, and I wanted to show you my 1888 Goodwin Champion baseball set with Dunlop. Get one more look at this, Andrews. And while I show you this, remember there's still the contest that we're doing, the 2,000 subscriber contest. And Sammy just did a video on that earlier today. I'll go ahead and put a link to that. And to remind you that on the 27th, on Saturday the 27th, we're going to go ahead and do our drawing for the winner. It's going to be a live stream. I'm going to have 4 cards I'm going to give away. I'm also going to do a box break there. And I got a couple boxes to pick from that I've had, and we'll share and we'll see which ones I'll have the chat pick which one they want, which one of the 2 they want me to break. That's the Brouthers card. And that should be fun. I'll put a link below. All you need to do is go to the video. I'll put a link on the video that I did. And all you need to do is go to that video, leave a comment, and you'll be entered into the contest. So here's another good look at that Tim Keefe. That Tim Keefe is the highest graded. And your min 8. And one last look at the greatest player of the 18th century. And that is Adrian Anson, Cap Anson. So thanks for watching, guys. Check out the links below and leave a comment. And I'll be sharing some more of my collection later on this month and later on in the upcoming videos. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day. This is Orlando from A Collector's Dream. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.